Hello and welcome to How Not to Screw Up Your Kids, the bucket emptying episodes. I'm your host, Dr Maryhan, psychologist, parenting expert and author of the How Not to Screw Up Your Kids, a real life guide to parenting book. Have I got a corker of a question for you today? My mother, and I'm just going to, sorry to interrupt myself, but I just want you to think about this because I remember this happening to me quite a lot. Not in the same. Let me read you the question. My mother, my child's grandmother, wants my son to kiss her goodbye, but he doesn't want to. I don't want to make him. What should I do? And I think this will resonate with so many of us from our own childhood of those scenarios, whether it was an auntie, an uncle, a great uncle, a nephew, whatever it is, that we were made to either kiss or look them in the eye. But we're going to talk specifically about this notion of kissing. Because I think that's a particularly crucial. The looking in the eye is a separate one, and we can cover that as a separate question. Because this is a really important piece. We're talking a lot generally in parenting and within schools, as part of the Everyone's Invited movement. This notion of consent, and the fact that we own our bodies. They are our bodies. We get to choose what we do with them and what people request of us to do with those bodies. And in terms of that specific question, we should not be forcing children to kiss relatives. And let me explain why. Because I think we have to be respectful that our children have a right to make a choice about who they kiss and who they don't kiss, who they hug and who they don't hug, who holds their hand when they're going somewhere and who doesn't, who picks them up, who cuddles them. Because what we want our children to feel empowered to do is to be able to use their voices to be able to say, this is not okay for me. This is not appropriate. So when we force our children to do something like that, something they feel uncomfortable with, and I'll talk a little bit more about what might be causing that. But when we force our children to do something that they feel fundamentally uncomfortable with, for whatever reasons, we are then opening them up and making them more vulnerable to somebody else then using their influence, their power, their exerting their influence on our children to make them do something else that they do not want to do. So I think consent is all about... It's not about being paranoid that children are going to say we've done something inappropriate, but consent is simply about empowering our children, our teens, to become adults who are able to say, I don't feel comfortable with this, and for that to be acknowledged and accepted and to be respected. So I think that's broadly, basically my answer, which is really simple. The simple response is no. Now, obviously, I understand what that does in terms of placing you piggy in the middle. You feel that you've got your mum on one side, right, why can't your child kiss me goodbye, and so you've got her feelings and her potentially feeling hurt. You've got your child who is then potentially feeling upset because they're being asked to do something that they don't want to do. So I do think there's an element of education here that we need to have, and that we need to speak to our parents or our uncles or great uncles or whoever it might be that is the adult that is making the consent request that our child is opting out of and saying no to. And I think part of that is having it's just having an honest conversation. I understand, Mum, it's really upsetting for you that Jack doesn't want to kiss you. But it really isn't because they don't care. They're just really uncomfortable about kissing someone that they're not familiar with, for example. So it's about having an honest conversation, but it's having an honest conversation, having had a discussion with your child as, it's absolutely all right for you to make a choice that you do not want to kiss grandma, granny, nanny, nana, whatever that might be. I would love to be able to understand what is it particularly about kissing her that makes you feel uncomfortable. So we're trying to understand, and I'm trying to understand that because we want our children to be able to understand and then be able to articulate for themselves. But we also want to be able to understand because that helps us when we're feeling in this piggy in the middle situation, that we can then communicate. So it may well be that your child doesn't want to kiss their grandmother because they see them once a year. And actually, this is much more to do with you're not someone that I feel particularly familiar with. And because of that, I don't feel particularly comfortable. Maybe there's a certain smell that's attached to them. Maybe there's a height thing. Maybe when they kiss, they grab them and they squeeze them. I don't know what it might be. But what we really want to try and understand is I respect your decision that this feels really uncomfortable. And I really would like to understand. And I'd also like to put forward the point of view as to why your grandmother is looking to have, this is the way that she shows her love and that she shows how much she cares about you and her affection. Because what we also want our children, not because we want to coerce, this is really important. It's not about coercion, but it's about helping them understand from another perspective. So this is your view and it's your body and you get to choose and you get to have that consent. But I also think it's really important that you understand why that request is being made, so they can understand the difference between a request which is being made by someone who legitimately loves and cares for them and is trying to show that love and affection to them, and somebody who is trying to step over a line of consent that is looking to take advantage. Because there might be the gap might be an education gap or a discomfort gap, or some children are just not particularly tactile. Some children, and particularly when we have children who are neurodiverse, they really struggle sometimes with that touch and that physical side, and some will view it and find it really helpful. So I think we have to start on the basis that we should never ask our children to consent to anything that they don't feel comfortable with. Full stop. We should have a conversation to be able to understand what is it about that particular request that is being made that makes them feel uncomfortable. To have a conversation with them about being able to see a different perspective in terms of why that request was being made, so they can understand another person's viewpoint, and then to make a plan about what might happen moving forward. And what might happen moving forward is simply that request no longer needs to be made because I am not going to do it, and we've understood where the discomfort is, and we're saying we don't want you to be in that situation, and you've made it perfectly clear you don't want to. But it could be actually I'm not really familiar with this person. I don't know them very well, and actually I might feel different if I saw them more often. It may well be that there's a particular aspect to the way that they hug them that actually just requires some feedback. It's actually when you kiss them, they don't feel comfortable with you kissing them near their mouth. Maybe it's a grandparent that kisses them on the mouth, and actually they want to be kissed on their cheek. Or maybe it's actually to do with the accompanying sort of body language in terms of the hugging that then comes with it that they feel particularly uncomfortable about. So it's being able to, your body, your choice. Help me understand what it is, understand the alternative viewpoint as well, and then what might be the next step. And all of this is helping our children to be able to communicate, to be able to use their voice, to understand that their bodies are their own, to be able to see things from a different perspective, from another person's viewpoint, and then to problem solve. We have this scenario, this is what we're going to do moving forward. And then that arms you with the information that you then need to have that conversation with a parent. And part of it is also accepting their viewpoint, your parents' viewpoint, which they might find difficult to understand. And you may well get this notion of, well, you're just pandering, you shouldn't be listening to what a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old is telling you. You're the parent, whatever that might be. Or you may get a very accepting acknowledgement. Yep, that's fine. That's not a problem. But it is just really important that we're trying to be open and honest and transparent, and to communicate with compassion that this is the reason why Jack doesn't want to do that. They feel uncomfortable about this. It makes them do that. And right now, moving forward, they're not ready. And we have to respect that, and helping them understand how that then empowers them and then prevents any potential future issues. So I hope that was a useful one, because I think that is a common scenario that our children find themselves in, and that we find ourselves in, having to try and navigate that. I hope that you have found the episode helpful and the advice was useful. And if you have, I would be ever so grateful if you could rate, review and follow this podcast so that others can find us and we can spread the love. So until next time.